So some people have been freaking out that there'd be a World War III and that people will be drafted. Um, I'd have to say that World War III is unlikely, and also getting drafted is extremely unlikely. As far as I can remember, or not remember, as far as I can tell, um, you can't get drafted if the U.S. declares war. You get drafted if you get invaded, and if you get invaded, if the country's basically gets invaded, then you can get drafted. But it's highly unlikely that Iran or even China uh, can actively land on U.S. soil unless they do make it a suicidal mission. And China's the only one who, well, China and Russia are the only ones who have this chance. But China has economical reasons not to go to war with us because that would basically um, kill any debts that we have with China, which is in the trillions right now. And basically, they'll have trillions of dollars that don't exist in their account. This will also kill a lot of US businesses, which we don't want, uh, because, well, that's bad. Now, I know a lot of people are just not happy about this whole situation and all, but for those who don't know, I believe a Baghdad airport, which is like dead center of Iraq, got hit by a few rockets, and the US counterattacked where those rockets were at a few Iraqi militia bases. And as a result, an Iraqi embassy got attacked. If you can look at these pictures here, a lot of news sites for the first few days started saying it was a protest. At least if you watched on the news, if you look at the articles, they said it was an attack, and you can see the flames and such going on. You can see that they tore off a plaque on the American embassy as well. If you see some of the videos, you also see them throwing cocktails. These weren't protests, and I find it insulting that people keep saying that they're protests. Because you look at France, they have protests and people rioting. The people who were rioting were the ones who were destroying vehicles and just putting banks on fire. But there were also people protesting there, and they were protesting peacefully. And I think uh, that the French have every right to arrest those people who were rioting. Over here, you just basically have people trying to destroy the place. They didn't fully destroy it, but they were trying to destroy the place. They were throwing they were flying Iranian flags around, and spraying graffiti and such. So Trump decides to react to the one who was who I guess is the puppet master of all this, of the attack on the airport, and just kills Soleimani. I can't pronounce his name, but he attacks this Iranian general that was on Iraqi soil, which, I mean, in a way, he wasn't supposed to be there in the first place. He kind of did attempt to kill American soldiers. So if you see it from that perspective, yes, but he was a top tier general. It's up to you whether this was justified or not. But he was a general of Iran who attacked an Iraqi, or who orchestrated the attack on an Iraqi airport and a U.S. embassy. So, if you know the history between Iran and U.S., about 40 years ago, I believe this is how it all started. About 40 years ago, a few U.S. citizens were detained in Iran, and they weren't let go. And U.S. had been demanding their release ever since. I can't remember whether they were released or not. I think it was a preacher was released, and basically ever since then, relations have basically soured because of that. They have also been uh, orchestrated. That I believe partially at fault with the 9/11 attack, but that was mostly from people from Afghanistan, some people in Saudi Arabia, but Saudi Arabia, not wanting to go to war, decided to completely uh, just help out the U.S. But we still have a complicated relations with them. Apparently, their leaders are okay with being allies with us, but there there are people who are kind of split on this. And also, so basically, Iran during the Iraq and Afghanistan war, they have been sending rounds and ammunition and also military advisors to stop them. And also, Israel uh, has been constantly going to war with Hamas over and over again because somehow, and I think you can guess why, somehow Hamas keeps getting thousands and thousands of missiles. Every time they go to war, those thousands of missiles get fired, Israel shoots back, and they end up hitting civilians. I think some of you can probably remember this during the Obama administration. It turned out some of those areas where they were getting shot at, some of those missile silos, not silos, those areas where the missiles were coming from, had civilians under there. And for some reason, Israel has never really annexed Hamas, and the U.S. has never really stopped the missiles from going there. It's very suspicious that no one's actually trying to just take Hamas off the map. So there's also been this problem in Syria, if you don't know, because there was a civil war. Obama decided to get involved for some reason, and then we had U.S. citizens just training soldiers for fighting, quote, the ISIS fighters, quote, unquote. Because that just makes no sense. You're training soldiers in Syria to fight ISIS. And I really don't believe that at all. And we've been trying to get out there. So we were supposed to have been pulling out of Iraq, but for some strange reason there was an attack orchestrated in there. And also, yeah, Saudi Arabia and their little proxy war, Iran's little proxy war between Saudi Arabia and Yemen. We have a few soldiers advising that war, but otherwise there's not really a huge amount of... Well, actually, I think there were some missile attacks, but otherwise there wasn't really a huge amount of stuff going on. Apparently there was an attack in Kenya as well, but there's no real proof whether it was Iranians were involved. It might have just been a coincidence. It might have just been terrorists taking advantage of that. But anyway, Baghdad. There was an attack, and then Iran it says that they were retaliating the retaliatory attack, and there was recently another missile attack, this time from Iran, attacking U.S. bases. So basically, we were fighting a Cold War for decades between Iran and the U.S. Not in the terms of nuclear missiles. It was just this Cold War between Iran and U.S. because no one really wanted to go to war. Everyone was already sick of the war. But we ended up fighting with Iraq and Afghanistan anyway, but not Iran, because no one wanted to have to fight such a huge country that has allies such as Russia and China. But it's unlikely that China and Russia will be involved in the war, and it's highly unlikely that the U.S. will even be calling people to join the war. I mean, the EU's not going to join for any reason, and the U.S. doesn't really have any reason to have them join. And I just don't see it happening. And I tried looking back. There was this where I think tensions got the strongest, Obama's nuclear deal. And I couldn't go far enough because the stupid Google would rather talk about something from 2018 rather than something from much earlier. That I think it was during Obama's first term or second term. I don't remember, but there was this nuclear deal that happened, and some people were praising it, a lot of people were not, and actually there were a lot of people who were praising it, but this is the furthest I can get because they won't take me that far, so you can't have this is after we discover basically everything. So basically, it talks about Obama's secret side deals going on, and this is after the deal that they made, and all of a sudden you're seeing these weird videos on NBC and CNN of Obama making the deal, and then also on the side you see Iranian people burning U.S. flags and saying "Death to America." It's like, this was a great deal, and it was the weirdest thing I had ever seen. It's like they're just doing it because it's their first victory in a long time or something like that, and it was the weirdest thing I had ever seen. I would see no reason to do a deal like that if they were just doing something like that. But, they made the deal anyway. And so they had secretly sent a plane to Tehran, loaded with 400 million Swiss francs. And I believe this was partially one of the problems that we've had, because Iran, this actually makes us the largest state sponsor of terror. We send... And look, 2 more secret flights, $1.3 billion in cash. And how many of those missiles that they made do you think was sent over to Hamas and over to Yemen? So anyway, the bombshell revelation... What, really? In a new report that the Obama secretly tried to help Iran send $5.7 billion in Iranian assets. I don't see why this is relevant, but this... And by the way, this is the Washington Post. They are as left-wing as they come. And, well, honestly, I think they're doing this because this is, like, during the time they started not liking Obama all of a sudden and just going pro-Clinton. And, looking at this... And then Trump decided to just scrap the deal because Iran was still... he says it's because Iran's been cheating on the deal, and, well, this is according to him and some news medias, including Washington Post and the FBI and the CIA. Personally, I don't trust the FBI and CIA, but it seems likely that they might doing this. And this is where Iran started getting more aggressive than they already were. When Trump decided to not only go away from the deal, but uh, put sanctions on Iran, which I don't know why we didn't have sanctions on them in the first place if they were funding all these wars. But then again, we also fund some wars too, like the one in Kenya and Saudi Arabia. Well, actually, technically, we're making money out of that. Saudi Arabia is buying a bunch of this stuff. So Trump pulls out of the Iran deal, and people are both praising it and also pretty angry. And uh, and then after Trump just like decides to do sanctions, they attack a few. Uh, what was it? Let me look it up. Iran sinks oil tankers. They didn't sink any U.S. ships for decades already. Sinks oil tankers. 2 oil tankers off Iran in the Gulf of Oman. This could spell trouble for U.S. relations. I don't really care about that. Who were the... Okay, it was UK, and I believe another one... The other tanker was Panama, flagged Kuka? That's odd. I thought it was Norway. Are we sure it's Panama? I know there was a UK maritime trade, but they also hit another. Yeah, this is a very, very long and complicated history. To be fair, it's actually quite surprising that we've been able to avoid a war with Iran for so long after about 40 decades. That was a pretty long time. Now, for China and Russia to support them, they had to go through these areas, which shouldn't be that hard. They are allied with most of these guys. I think they're still allied with these guys and Kazakhstan, but I think it's a defensive pact. But otherwise, Russia doesn't really have much to do with joining in the war. I just can't see it. There's no benefit for them other than to keep Iran in power. And China just can't benefit from this at all, because we're still doing stuff with them, doing deals and stuff, and they're also having to deal with scrutiny over Hong Kong. So basically, it's very likely just if there's a war, it's just going to be a war between the U.S. and Iran. It's not going to be World War III. No one else is going to want to join in that. And the only country that would likely happily join is Saudi Arabia, because Iran's been they've been screwing with Saudi Arabia the most. Saudi Arabia has every reason to be fighting with Iran, but otherwise, I don't see anyone else joining. And the U.S. will have to try to keep Saudi Arabia from going to war. Right? That's the problem. U.S. doesn't want to get anyone else involved. What else? I don't know. Either way, you're not likely to be drafted. I would put this in a video game like everyone else that I've subscribed to who plays video games is doing, but I don't want to. Like, this is just a non-video game video. And hey, it makes my channel more adult, I guess. I'm not cursing, but it's not for. It makes it less for kids. The channel, because I'm playing Minecraft, and it's not like Kappa will believe that it's for kids or that it's not for kids. So yeah, it's unlikely people are going to get drafted. Everybody's freaking out over this, and honestly, I don't want to go to war, but it just seems like it was inevitable, at least in my opinion. Everybody's just trying to avoid it, and we just didn't have any way of doing that. But if we don't go to the war, surprisingly, after that U.S. attack, then we don't. It's it's great, I guess. Then Iran basically just has a proxy war, or keeps having their proxy war with us, because Lord knows that we, uh, well, it's, you know, technically Iraq and Afghanistan, the citizens suffer as well, but mostly it's they try to go after the U.S. citizens. So it's basically that Iran's proxy war with the U.S. That's all it's been. Anyway, I don't know. I'm just I just hope that this kind of goes away. Everybody's talking about it because I think because it creates the views. I'm just sick of hearing about people talking about getting drafted. You're not going to get drafted, not unless Congress changes the law, and it's just unlikely that they're going to support that. I don't even see Congress supporting. Well, yeah, they'd probably support a war if it was Iran doing the attacks, but I just don't see people supporting this war for very long. If the war happens, a lot of people are going to get voted out, and I'm not so sure about Trump, but a lot of people voted for him because they wanted Trump to get out. What's weird about this? They were in the middle of pulling troops out. Why on earth did you attract? Why on earth did Iranians support an attack on a Baghdadi airport, and then a U.S. embassy in Iraq? It just makes no sense. Why would you do that? We were pulling out as many soldiers as we could. Because every time we try to pull out, Trump pulls out, he suddenly changes his mind because something happens. It's absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, it's as if Iran doesn't want us to leave. That's just so bizarre. Anyway, yeah, that's it. You know, I get my views. The next Minecraft video is coming in, and yeah, I guess hopefully this craziness goes away. Stay safe, guys.